should be out.
Oh, what? Hell yeah. No, the Wi-Fi has not been letting my desktop Gmail work for like the last 3 rounds, but it finally worked. Cool. I'm good.
You good? Yeah. Okay. Advantage 1 is Yemen. Trump has renewed unqualified U.S. support for Saudi coalitions. War in Yemen. Increased support prolongs mass suffering and destroys chances for conflict resolution. Bosnia 18. Trump is violating America's role in the war in Yemen. The president expended U.S. military assistance to Saudi and UAE allies prolonging the war and increasing suffering. The work at least 10,000 left, 120 million need humanitarian, 80 million are on the brink of famine, and 1 million infected with cholera. Increased U.S. military support, but a larger policy shift. Trump awaits the constant support for Saudi Arabia offered virtually unqualified support by blaming taking sides. Trump exacerbated conflict weaponry used with U.S. technical support, revealed a minor changes. Trump is escalating military involvement without pushing for a political settlement, making the world's worst humanitarian crisis even more severe. And U.S. support is the key. Internally, other countries are pulling out and pale in comparison to the scale of U.S. assistance. Juan 18. Calls for more restriction of growing, particularly in Europe. Trump pointed to illiquid arms deals as the reason to say about the Kingdom, Denmark, and Finland become the latest countries to suspend deals after Germany. Our database of Saudi imports show the U.S. is the biggest supplier. Exporters have dramatically decreased in supply. Despite these decreases, the value of Saudi weapons imports actually increased by 38%, almost entirely because of the huge uptick in trenches in the U.S. No country comes close to the United States in major weapons supply. The U.S. accounted for 61% of major arms sales to the Saudis. Russia's supply so little is not even included in the organization's database. The impact is massive and ongoing. The war in Yemen is an atrocity. Harding 18. Saudi intervention in Yemen with U.S. war ranks alongside the worst humanitarian catastrophes. The coalition aided by U.S. supply weapons and bombing killed thousands, strikes targeted hospitals, water treatment plants, even a few of the Trump falsely certified the Saudi would take nuclear to avoid killing U.S. supported bombing part of a larger plan that includes blockade that put millions of arrested starvation, sparked the largest call outbreak in living many. Independently, RSAF relies on U.S. supply parts and support to carry out strikes that regularly hit civilian sites. Rule H-19. The Air Force issued requesting airplane to keep Saudi F-15 flights flying. Despite direct counter to the claims that if the U.S. didn't sell Saudi Arabia, Russia and China will these weapon systems all from U.S. manufacturers acquire U.S. parts. Saudi Arabia is the third largest fleet of F-15 since March 2015. Saudi aircraft carried over 16,000 strikes, nearly one-third of its civilian sites. The Saudis remain cutting all logistical support and uninterrupted munitions. The U.S. military continues to provide maintenance, tech support, and training to Saudi Air Force. Ending that alone resolves massive violence and ends airstrikes from civilians. 5/18. By itself, an Saudi bombing campaign and blockade would be a milestone. Airstrikes that kill thousands, bombing destroyed infrastructure, making medical care and food distribution difficult. Blockaded ports and airports have prevented humanitarian aid from entering the country. This is contributing to mass famine. Advantage 2 is ACAP. U.S. committed to the war in Yemen fuels ACAP. The Saudi coalition recruits and supports them while the U.S. ignores them. AP News 18. A Saudi-led alliance backed by U.S. boat have been paying Al-Qaeda commanders to leave cities while letting others retreat with weapons, equipment, and cash. Hundreds of Al-Qaeda members were recruited. Key figures in the deal said the U.S. was aware and held off drone attacks against the group. Al-Qaeda fighters are effectively on the same side as Saudi coalition. Much of what the U.S. is doing in Yemen is aiding ACAP. Coalition fighters actively recruit Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is leveraging the chaos to its advantage within this complicated conflict. Its numbers are rising. Weeks before this entry, a string of trucks with mass Al-Qaeda fighters drove out Al-Said, and the coalition actively supports ACAP while the U.S. watches an ongoing war in Yemen fuels them too. Fenton Harvey 18. Saudi Arabia and the UAE's policies in Yemen allow Al-Qaeda to thrive, secretly supporting the faction undermining efforts to defeat ACAP. The UAE supported militias with ties to ACAP. The coalition cut deals, giving them cash. ACAP fighters joined the coalition. The U.S. was aware and held off airstrike. Coalition support to Al-Qaeda could lead to long-term presence of extremism. New generations will be powerful. Al-Qaeda has recruited many fighters because of the chaos in Yemen, and some even voiced support because of the stability provides. Saudi Arabia bombing campaign allow ACAP to flourish. Only ending the conflict and strengthening democratic transition can prevent extremism, and bioterror is likely an indefensible. Countries aren't prepared to can restrict materials. On Hebel 17. Bioterror could go more than nuclear, but no one is ready to deal with the potential threat of deadly biological weapons on major civilian areas. Like country public health regulation, provide little defense storage, engineer microbiotics, and more likely the source of attack requires malicious intent, process, know-how, and the right supplies, all of which are available. It would be difficult to regulate and restrict precursors to bioweapons. Governments only have response measures to this, and bioweapons are self-replicating and exponentially deadly. Even small amounts escalate to extinction and avoid burnout. Sandberg et al. 8. We face barriers from emergent advances to make possible pathogens capable of extinction. Level pandemics pathogens are self-replicating smaller, so becomes exponentially destructive pathogens that implicate extinction. Many species engineered pathogens might be capable of extinction. Solvency. Thus, the plan resolved the executive branch of the United States federal government should immediately end all military aid provided to the authoritarian regimes of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and enforce an executive order implementing this. Plan causes peace talks continue. U.S. support enables the war to continue indefinitely. Bando 18. Peace talks offer hope. They advance further than previous attempts and reach some positive agreements. The Western nation to turn against the war and encourage concessions necessary to more during peace. So long as Riyadh can get a link check from Washington, the kingdom has no reason to temper its policies and no filling, cost, retraining, and quality. All solve Cavalry 18. Saudi Arabia is in the middle of a major war. The military relies on American maintenance training support. European governments already feel strong political pressure not to put Saudi Arabia restraints on the military to employ Russia, much less Chinese weapons. Cost of fortune requires retraining and greatly reduce military hours. Cannot produce next-gen vehicles for its own forces, much less by export. China is not producing sophisticated systems. Saudi Arabia wants Trump already crushed Iranian containment by withdrawing troops from key strategic areas. Sad courage and Dubitz 18. Trump's decision withdraws forces from Syria concurrently with intent to reduce the number in Afghanistan and further drown in Iraq made its media efforts to contain Iran. The interests of the U.S. have been routed. The U.S. forces in Syria with a hint of Iranian containment. They check the advance of much larger and more costly Iranian forces. Trump has no revision left powerless. This senior official withdrawal has severely weakened Iranian policy, weakened American allies in the region, obliged the Kurds to seek protection from Iran. The great Iranian tug of war may well be over, and conditions fail. Only full cutoff solved. Actually, I'm going to skip that card. Framework. The standard is maximizing expected well-being. Actor spec 8. Governments have to aggregate all collective actions and trade-offs and help someone hurt those means-based action trade. Freeze action. B.No activation takes for governments policies to create permissions, prohibitions, or authorizing action on the emissions of the state assumes culpability and regulating the public aid. I voting against something still acting. C. Point. No intent for the distinguished government can have intensive debate of multiple actors, separate motivations. I some clients people might vote for something again votes other people actually think it's good. Skip the calculates thing. Topicality. Specking a regime is good. APEC finders, there's only one viable AF under their interim kills quality and quantity of AF neck is actually more better arguments if they have generics and specific quality. The AF is pigeonholed in one direct which answers TVA and flips limits since it gives neck an unreciprocal prep advantage. Always in reversibility. Neck can still use generics to engage spec AF, but there's no check to 2 in our scripts and neck monopolization strategy with only one AF point semantics. Presume an absolute truth topic subsets are fine over in 14. Nebo finds this definition. It's unclear the Lichman have intended to define their articles not about topicality definitions and trends. Bounds are common. The plan must be an example of the topic considering topic plan to chief power should be curtailed. The specific plan made until the truth generally that would render plans consistently deemed topical, non-topical method. Singular political strategies are doomed to fail. Methodological pluralism is necessary to any sustainable critique which justifies permanent to any K. We impact on your notion of severance or exclusivity. Bleecker 14. Upholding one's objective position while the critical scrutiny can have far-reaching consequences. Methodological pluralism, like the hardest sustainable critique of a single method can never adequately represent the event. Each should recognize details and perspectives of the other kind of methods. Precisely when debating battle, they can range from post-structuralist deconstruction, and positive social science to the benefits, opportunity, bring out nuances, identify the redefined tendencies that critically reflect what is sustainable, and no prior questions, actual material amounts that's occurring right now in the assholes that don't sacrifice certainty of action or epistemic questioning. Conquer 99. It is important we proceed with the analysis of the material towards extending moral inclusion, the climate of epistemological certainty, important political search, saying that also we cannot afford to wait for meta question to be answered, nor for a credible law, nor do we have a question which comes first serving the meta theoretical issues or institutional vision. The two candidates should be pursued together. The educational method of the 1AC turn state battle arguments floating about the state is a valuable survival strategy. William 70. It is erroneous to think one can isolate oneself from institutions, self-imposed isolation initiated by revolutionary movements of the great era for just mighty youth militant should become acquainted with methods of the oppressor. It may change to be more thoroughly effectuated from within the team valuable and how effective struggle for tactic plans analysis. I cut it analysis.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Ready?
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
you good? Alright. What does the U.S. provide to Saudi Arabia in military aid?
They do massive FMS transfers, like over $100 billion. They provide support to their air force.
FMS is foreign military
Foreign
sales?
military sales.
Okay, so you sell weapons?
Yes.
How does the plan end those?
It prevents Congress from okaying them. When they do arms sales, Congress has to check.
Cool.
off on them.
The fill-in stuff.
Yeah.
What your advantage evidence says that U.S.-made bombs are being used in Yemen. Your fill-in evidence says that Russia and China can't replace the planes. What part of this evidence says they can't replace the bombs?
Sure. So planes are built to use specific bombs. You can't fit like a U.S.-made bomb from like Raytheon in the kinds of planes that Russia is using.
Okay, but the airstrikes they're doing are like there's a lot of carpet bombing going on in Yemen. So even if it's not like a targeted strike where you need specific compatibility, why does transition to other types of bombs take as long as
it's
you're
not one just about bombs. They also provide them things like fueling on the ground. They give them targeting software. They instruct them, etc., which also supports their air force. And again, even if they lose out on the bombs, they would have to restructure their entire military and retrain pilots to fly the new planes.
Wait, they'll have to retrain pilots to fly
new planes.
New planes. Okay, wait, why can't they use the planes we've already given them?
Because their planes are currently outfitted, they can only use U.S. bombs, but the kinds of Russian bombs don't fit. Like the compatibility, it'd be like trying to.
Okay, but they wouldn't have to learn how to fly new planes, right?
Because they would either have to change the planes they have to fit Russian made. It's like trying to put like a 45 caliber bullet into like a 9mm.
I understand the distinction. The in Yemen, what other sort of parties are participating in the violence in Yemen?
There's multiple. There's things like the Houthi rebels. There's Al-Qaeda that's operating there. It's obviously a complex situation.
Is there other countries?
There's potentially like Iran that may be supporting.
So there are no other countries on the ground in Yemen
There's
besides
also
Saudi?
part of the Saudi coalition, like UAE,
UAE.
etc.
Okay, what does the UAE do in Yemen?
The UAE aids with the Saudi war effort.
How? What do they do?
They just like engage in different parts of the attack. They also
They just
engage
like
in strike.
engage in different parts of the
Yes,
attack.
they do multiple things. They aid with bombings, etc., stuff like that.
Okay, cool. A couple other questions. The Iran containment stuff. This says that the administration's efforts to contain Iran were contingent on Syria and Iraq. Why does this mean Iran containment at large has been shot because of Trump's decision in Syria and Afghanistan?
Sure, it's talking about the ability for the United States to successfully contain Iran, which all of the troop presences, which it delineates, have been removed, were key to do so.
Okay, what part of this card says that Iran containment is shot because we've sort of weakened our position in Syria?
Okay, I will read a line. The withdrawal has severely weakened Iran policy.
No, his own Iran policy. What about...
Okay, the great American-Iranian tug-of-war may well be over.
Okay, that's fine. I guess that was... Yeah, that's fine. 6, The Yemen advantage, the terror advantage.
Anything on like tier framework?
I mean, it'll be on the pages that they're relevant to, like on the offs. It might just be 5, but right for now, keep 6.
I gotta get it.
We'll see how speedy I'm feeling today.
Sorry.
6 Yemen terror.
Yep. You good?
Yeah.
Military aid solves terrorism. Middle East stability training is increasing now, which solves collateral damage. BPMA 1218 has a place of crucial role in maintaining security in the Middle East due to political importance and strategic location given the ISIS will sexual extreme with the U.S. force. As it is support counterterrorism as well, U.S. cooperation kingdom has full numerous attempts made successfully directional attacks. U.S. remains committed to providing Saudi armed forces with the support necessary to protect the region. Saudi government is taking measures to improve the targeting and also adapting to mechanisms for investigating civilian casualties. Saudis agreed to receive training from U.S. forces on the line for bilateral multilateral training designed to improve the identifying, targeting, engaging with middle and collateral damage. Saudi joint counterterrorism efforts are key to fighting Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Training, funding, and advisors are key. Biden 16. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed a bilateral agreement on tactical counterterrorism operation. The U.S. provides advisors. The U.S. military also says to training Saudi forces. Saudi officials now want to care to that counterterrorism not playing a leading role stopping Islamic and Al-Qaeda. Saudi approach can be seen to have also Al-Qaeda sufficient in Yemen. Saudi plays a central role in the U.S. campaign against State by hosting a base for drone attacks. Saudi government responses have been strong company invested heavily in fighting and training finding considerable U.S. help. Aid to the UAE is also key to counter-terror partnership. Yemen is key. Karam 18. And that is called UAE Operation Counterterrorism Operation the Al-Qaeda Yemen model. The UAE with some American help intelligence, the help provide organized local tribes in Al-Qaeda for been 36 hours about help for a year. Efforts against the capitals intended by Yemen's strategic importance, geographic location on one of the busiest highway for international maritime trade. The Al-Qaeda's strongest local branches located in Yemen and use of position planning attacks in the U.S. is called the Shuban, or the attack on the U.S. embassy and the foreign cartridge plot, and the examples that I captured. The love of U.S.-UAE cooperation so close the U.S. military has agreed to conduct joint operations that have already forced an air focus of the U.S. mission to Yemen despite getting cap and ISIL. Which increase in aid has helped its success. USCC aid. UAE is with Kimball Armed Forces complementary aims and abilities make UAE natural partners. UAE works with tribes and providing lucrative incentives collaborate against ACAB. This outweighs their evidence. Their evidence just isolates bad things that Saudi Arabia and the UAE have done, but does not isolate why aid is key. You should filter their offense through specific lines. Their evidence that refer to military aid to the UAE. Next up. Plan cuts to oil shocks and fill in those deck of the economy. Akadeli teeny sanctions are imposed on Saudi Arabia will fix the economic disaster of the rock. The entire world, as a capital of oil, no should rule out the price jumping to 200, even double that figure. Oil may be priced in different currency instead of the dollar. Oil is more important commodity traded by the dollar. Should the oil destroy the Middle East and the arms of Iran? Any section will with the West will cut the kingdom. The result of other option. Russia and China the focus Riyadh's military needs. Repercussions will include Russian military base on top of this. Oil Israel close to Iran. The U.S. will be to the Saudi market. Washington put sanction on Iran to establish its own economy. The oil price spikes cost for great power. War Bunzel 18 academic historical evidence tells the higher product expect our geopolitical outlook is a rising gives China confidence and influence tensions and at least a more aggressive behavior than possible. High increase national security and a president who appears unchanged opposition robust compulsion expenditure all revenue fetched the country with the cash they can put towards military spending and foreign adventures fueling arms sales are going to be aggression and conflict by miscalculation more likely about 97 barrels of oil exports are seen more important outfield deliver 1/2 industry worse than 1973 resource war and financing for insurgencies or rising over enable Russia to post relevant revisionist tendencies or Russian the gas stations with nuclear weapons higher pump prices means more weapons and nuclear otherwise next up. Aid is money in the form of gifts. Grafton, Lawrence, Kenton, 320. Foreign aid is the money that one country violent change release transfers to another. Way can take the form of gift or grant alone. The term usually refers to military assistance. Violation. The FN's arms sales. Don't let them say the plan text in a vacuum. They admit in cross-text that they and arms sales. Saudi Arabia funds the arms sales themselves. They don't use U.S. aid. Ryan 18. The sales are more significant because Saudi Arabia uses money rather than U.S. aid to finance our purchases. I've inserted a screenshot from U.S. aid below. We've only given $11,000 in what's called military aid. That was the same year we sold them $100 billion in weapon, which is not military aid as per the U.S. definition of military aid. But for predictable limits, it justifies ending any trade agreement that could potentially benefit the military. Allow apps like X bilateral trade agreement with China because it produces military capacity, which is unpredictable and expose the topic. The U.S. only spent $15 billion in military aid last year. The money trail is far more predictable than this few selective list of countries. Next up. The executive branch of the United States federal government should immediately end all military aid provided to the authoritarian regimes of Saudi Arabia and enforce an executive order implementing this. Rubin 112. Don't punish the UAE for Saudi missing the talks turn to retaliation, cutting all the military aid to Saudi Arabia. It's important not to punish allies. Saudi Arabia and is far more confident. Next up. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia are pursuing a policy of containment to check Iranian aggression. Saudi resistance is dependent on U.S. military aid. CFR 12.7. U.S. Saudi Arabia alliance is built on security cooperation relations between countries after war no war under Trump, providing security for the Persian Gulf of the U.S. priority. U.S. said many years relied on Iran as part of a Pin 12 policy stabilizing the region. The Islamic Revolution upended their approach with Saudi Arabia as the primary U.S. ally in the region. Saudi Arabia is a top destination for U.S. arms. The United States and Saudi Arabia have a common objective of regional stability and containing Iran. Iran will take any opportunity to exert its influence over Saudi Arabia, religious control, and regional hegemony. U.S. aid is necessary for containment. Marcus 17 Saudi Arabia around elected a free struggle for regional dominance exacted by religious difference. Has struggled with Saudi Arabia, South leaders of the world. U.S. led invasion of Iraq Iraq, the Hussein, remove crucial military counterweight to Iran and influence Iran and Saudi Arabia, exploited these upheavals to expand their influence. Saudi Arabia strongly contain rising Iranian influence on military adventurism and sanctuary regional tensions. Saudi Arabia rebels into many ways a regional equivalent of the Cold War. Iran and Saudi Arabia not directly fighting, but they're engaged in a variety of proxy wars. U.S. and allies have been seen as disabling forces in the Middle East. Successful containment of nuclear Iran is necessary to prevent multiple scenarios for global nuclear conflict. The impact is extinction. Lindsay, tenable by Tehran, by multiple systems of running neighbors. The risk of conventional nuclear war would escalate. More states might become more nuclear powers versus stop so efforts in nuclear weapons to be undermined nuclear Iran. Empire and resolve friends by distinct themselves to challenge policies more aggressively. Nuclear Iran, but Washington makes clear the rationale to overcome the high cost of nuclear like say Candy. Iran's nuclearization would not reduce Washington passively destroy the nightmare scenarios. He discussions are going to hard trigger Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Turkey would join NP2 would collapse under regional nuclear proliferation. Other global just duty scenario depending on whether they depend on USA. This outweighs their offense. Their author just says that their authors are just criticizing the ending of Saudi Arabia with rhetoric because they agree with containing Iran, which means if the authors of their thumper evidence heard the affirmative, they would say no to it because they would also disagree with trying to contain Iran. Saudi Arabia is more important because it is the linchpin of containment of Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran are the sort of two polar ends of the Middle East, whereas Syria was less important to containment of Iran. Skipping the next off, go to the case. Pulling U.S. support is where Saudi won't stop, can't stop. Rogan 18, if the U.S. pulls its support, Saudi will lose all inhibition by party and Houthi formation. Riyadh will lose interest in efforts to reach a ceasefire, but development is disaster. Yemeni civilians, the only reason Saudis are moving to a ceasefire is the Trump administration's pressure strategies do not realize the war is causing suffering, ludicrous in the press, but sees war efforts to prevent U.S. pressure. Saudis care little about killing civilians. If they build it, might win the war. America's the only check the check is held to Yemeni. Civil war would be a lot worse if the U.S. engagement is to engage. Turn the plan causes Russia fill in and less sophisticated tactics that result in more civilian deaths. Even if they can't use our planes to shift their weapons, they could get other things from Russia and China. Goldberg 12.5. Walking away from supporting the Saudi level, giving Washington the high ground alluded to stop the killing the Saudis. He's right about Iran establishing a foothold in the southern border, much about the interest procuring U.S. over there by Russian bombs to use less sophisticated weapons and tactics civilian deaths in the threat. People actually get China, Russia, Pakistan, Finland, Saudi can easily integrate their tech Saab 18. It's unlikely Washington is registered to read out of the U.S. and not the only game in time with Russia and China. Making to the region, Saudi will find China and Pakistan already ready settles, and Saudi Arabia not have to start from scratch. They already possess Chinese ballistic missiles. It is only a matter of time before they build up the country's strategic rapid forces, the terror advantage. Planfall, the plan doesn't say Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it says that Saudi Arabia, that's not the official name for it, which means the plan doesn't solve because that's not the official name used for it. The U.S. policy would be incoherent in plans. The blowback there doesn't turn the disadvantage. Blowback is almost ludicrous, and there are all causes for it. Their evidence just says recruitment drives up because of anti-U.S. perception, but all of the other things that we're doing in the Middle East would also cause anti-U.S. perception, which means they have no link term to the dissad. Their author concludes that the act is not sufficient to solve the crisis by mid 12.5. Don't expect Yemen's not here to go for changing policy. Saudi had most impact with a couple of broader political foreign powers in a ceasefire. Also, that counterterrorism efforts are key. That's their author. By mid 18. The U.S. will continue to offer Saudi Arabia assistance with territorial defense from Houthi missiles. U.S. support for deterrence is vital because terrorist groups remain concerned. The U.S. must continue counterterrorism operations in Yemen. Teetering U.S. commitments called Saudi Prolif Guzhansky 15. Saudi Arabia has been investigating nuclear tech. Saudi Arabia could observe as a military program to its allies' commitment change. This leads to security concerns primary factor motive of Saudi Arabia to pursue military program. Saudi Arabia determines that U.S. security is questionable. They're going to befriend the kingdom of Al-Hazard declares about alien the United States Saudi interest perception U.S. and unreliable outlook of the stretch Saudi firm like Saudi Arabia to pursue deterrence long term pursuit of nuclear weapons program and prepare those deterrence. Causes Middle East prolif and accidental nuclear war. Edelman 11 Pakistan could solve original weapons and deliver Saudi to provide the Saudis with infrastructure to produce weapons and understanding adultery during Saudi said about Saudi seek out nuclear weapons will highly destabilize and would decrease the incentive of other nations pursue on weapons war. Saudi for new weapons and powers would be prone to miscalculation and escalation. Right, prone to escalation.
Alright, so you didn't read T regimes
Nope.
or the cards after.
Yeah,
Edelman.
and I didn't read U.S. weapons force.
Oh wait, where is?
It's the last card in the Yemen advantage.
Oh, okay. Cool. Cross X.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, starting now. On the executive or the UAE pick, what's the net benefit?
Terror, terror, and then the fill-in arguments.
Why would that prevent fill-in?
Your fill-in, no fill-in warrants are all Saudi specific, so that Russia and China could fill into the UAE.
Where do you read any evidence that they will do that?
The Pakistan proves the link evidence just says that Russia and China are looking into fill-in spots where the U.S. exits.
Okay. The econ argument, how does Saudi Arabia have the power to raise all oil prices when the United States makes more oil than they import from Saudi Arabia?
Because they're sort of, there are two arguments. The first one is that Saudi Arabia still controls a large amount of global oil prices, which means bumps from Saudi Arabia, the price shocks, would still sort of cause ripples throughout the global economy.
Why do they have an incentive?
The second, can I explain the second one real quick? The second one is that Saudi Arabia has an important geographic location for sort of international trade. The Akadil evidence talks about it also undermining dollar hedge because Saudi Arabia can sort of mess around in because it controls it's in a central location to affect global markets.
Why do they have an incentive to affect global markets if just the U.S. withdraws?
Because they think that the United States they'd be angry at the United States and they'd be trying to punish them. if they sort of spike oil prices in the region, then.
How would that punish the United States if the United States didn't still get their own oil and they would only affect the global market?
Well, because oil has been sort of like a large basis of the Saudi-U.S. relation, like multiple leaders always talk about oil and Iran containment as the like two main reasons why like Saudi Arabia and the United States are like best buds. So if it is the case that Saudi Arabia is mad at the United States and the relations sort of collapse, then they would be using the two things that they think are most important to their relationship.
Okay. The aid for the trade, not aid.
Mm-hmm.
Which of this evidence is citing like U.S. policy about military?
Yeah, there's two sort of definition cards. The first piece of evidence sort of defines military assistance in the context of the United States, and it says it doesn't relate to like them purchasing their own thing. The Ryan evidence says that Saudi Arabia uses own money rather than U.S. aid to finance arms purchases, but I think the biggest one is that the United States' own government-run tracker for what U.S. aid is, say we've only given $11,000 to them in 2017. That was the year we sold them $100 billion in weapon, which means the United States' own tracker for military aid that we give to Saudi Arabia does not include that $100 billion sale, proving the context of our violation.
Okay. Terror. Your evidence just says they are training them, but that's fine actually. That's fine.
Okay.
I'll run prep. Alright, 5 seconds left. Here, let me send the doc.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, where'd you put the standard? T, case. T, case, Iran. Wait, hold on, sorry.
Wait, which advantages?
The advantages are in order.
Okay.
Just Yemen and,
Terror,
yeah.
Iran,
So T, case, the UAE pick really quickly. Then, oh, sorry, a lot of paper. Then containment.
Wait, you already put Iran in order.
Oh, wait, sorry. T, case, containment, after the UAE pick. Oil, terror.
So containment's after the UAE pick?
Yeah, the UAE pick is just like,
T, Yemen, terror, UAE, Iran, oil, terror DA.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Let me make sure. So T, advantage top down, UAE, oil.
So T, Yemen, ACAP, UAE.
Oil,
Okay.
the containment disad,
Okay.
and then terror.
Okay.
Good. I'm ready.
There it starts with the counter interp on T.
Yeah.
Everyone good?
One second.
Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
Counter military includes FMS Goal SP15. Most military comes in the form of foreign military shares. That's what the plan ends. DOS 18. Saudi Arabia is the largest FMS customer. Core topic led any interrupt includes arms sales, arbitrary clutch off one of the biggest military programs. Denies that core access to core topics like the one he sees like Saudi Arabia that overlimits the after programs like training and kills any modicum of flexibility. Their results in stale, repetitive debates that are skewed against the affirmative. Their offense. First, I want to do some evidence comparison. My evidence in the context of the Department of State, which is who provides military in the first place, means you should refer to the US State program. Then there are only standards, predictable limits. Obviously, the affirmative interrupt does not entail things like trade agreements with other nations. It's just a question of arms sales, which are explicitly one of the 9 programs that include military. Their predictable limits isn't. It's all their offensive predictable limits is solved by my interp. Now, the advantage. First on their fill-in arguments, the other countries cannot fill in for the United States, or cannot fill in for the United States. It costs too long and retraining is very expensive. Even if it's technologically capable of refilling, they still have to learn how to operate new software and do things also independently. They've conceded the Air Force argument, which is the Royalist 19 and the Biden 18 evidence. The Saudi Air Force cannot be replaced by other countries because the United States provides them F-15 fighter jets, because they have to retrain their entire army because they wouldn't get the fuel parts, expertise, technology, etc. from these other countries. It's an independent impact that continues the war in Yemen. That's most of the war in Yemen is the airstrikes, which is what causes the blockade, cholera, and starvation. Royalist 19. That's what solves all their fill-in arguments. Their Sub 18 evidence is just about Chinese missiles, which they use for countering other missiles, but it's not about their offensive capabilities, which means that only talks about China, but doesn't implicate any of their other fill-in arguments, which means that's impossible. The plan flaw about Kingdom, you should reject this. It's a one-sentence plan. Obviously, that's not the same thing as a massive bill, which means you should not vote down on this. This would be a silly 2-R the terror advantage. Their argument about blowback at all causes the 1AC advantage is not about blowback. It's about how the other countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia give aid and actually help ACAP. The Biden evidence is just generally about this author liking U.S. counterterrorism, but never single warranted and all their pro stuff. They have not impacted out how Saudi Arabia can proliferate. No country would want to help them. All the regional actors would be against them getting nuclear weapons, and the NPT would prevent them doing so. In other countries, the same thing. They've essentially conceded the terror advantage with the UAE, which is that the UAE and Saudi Arabia actively help ACAP in the region. They let them get away and do things like make the U.S. agree to deny them with drone checks while giving them cash, aid, and training their troops. Causes massive ACAP. They've conceded the impact of the Table 17 and Sandberg 8 evidence that causes massive bioterror, which countries can't defend. So they don't have the capability, no defense. They've also conceded this directly causes extinction. This was the only evidence read around it. Explicitly said an impact causes extinction rather than just evidence that says it leads to, and which leads to an internal link to an existential risk, which means this outweighs because it's the only explicitly implicated argument about extinction, which outweighs reversibility because you can't go back from anything if everybody's dead. Even if Iranian containment would be bad, cause a lot of deaths. If everybody in the world died because of bioterror, because the mass disease spread to everybody, then you wouldn't be able to prove that. The UAE pick. Crosscheck says the only net benefit was the arguments about fill-in and terror, which I've already answered to give reasons why the UAE is doing things like actively helping. That's in the AP that's in the AP evidence explicitly explaining, and the Fenton Harvey evidence explicitly explaining how the UAE gives money and aids terror groups, meaning they don't get the terror net benefit. And so far as I've done the weighing, that outweighs any fill-in arguments they've made. They've also not impacted fill-in and oil. Oh wait, sorry, containment. The war in Yemen strengthens Iran and weakens containment FCNL. Military escalation in Yemen emboldens Iran. Iran benefits prolonged conflict. Iran supports the Houthis. Farless and Saudi Arabia claim Iran see the war is a low-cost way to hire. Saudi Arabia giving more build to Saudis will make things worse. It is likely to drive rebel fractions even further than Iranian control. That way is all their arguments because if Saudi Arabia is a linchpin like they claim, that means it's necessary Saudi Arabia not get war. This is a proportional benefit for Iran in terms of power play in the region because Saudi Arabia is losing far more power and getting far weaker from the war in Yemen than Iran is. Also independently, my thumper is good on their evidence. They say Saudi Arabia is a linchpin, but they don't have a single war for that. All my evidence explains why these other areas like Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq are all far more key in pulling out of those with collapse. It also says in general the tug of war is over U.S. Containment is a U.S. strategy, which means they are the ones who helping Saudi Arabia do it. It means if it's collapsed by the thumper evidence, which means if it's collapsed by the thumper evidence in case, then they don't get the diss act. Now oil. Uniqueness overwhelmed filling. Saudi hikes are overwhelmed by all causes and encourage other producers to increase production, which stalls. Taylor 18. Trump ignored other factors. Trump ignored other factors driving the fall in oil prices. Concerned about global growth and rising U.S. oil production. U.S. exemption is sanctions on Iran. Oil Saudi is said to be considering cutting oil production next year because of these. Colgan argued the system has become more flexible, less reliant on long-term contracts, so it is easy to get imports from another producer. The U.S. has been producing more oil itself and imports a small amount of Saudi oil. The Saudi rate would affect the prices in the short term and encourages other producers to produce more. How they already produce more. Now the terror. None of their evidence in the context of what aid actually does. It just describes programs the U.S. is writing and says they're intended to help them with counter-terror, but it's not explicitly explaining what it does, whether or not it's effective. The argument about drones are the United States doesn't actually attack and fight terror groups because of that.
Okay, cool.
Read everything.
Yeah, for starting now.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Good timing. The UAE counterplan, the Yemen advantage, the terror DA, the terror advantage, and I'm just gonna put the Iran DA on top. It'll be like very brief there.
Sorry. You said UAE, Yemen.
Terror DA, terror advantage.
Okay.
Yep.
Iran quickly, and where's oil?
Oil's not in the order.
Oh, okay.
It's not a link term.
So from the top, it's Iran, pick Yemen, terror DA,
Terror advantage.
and terror advantage.
Yep.
Anything new?
No.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yes, there is a doc. I don't know why I said no. Cool. You good? Cool. Not doing for Iran will concede their thumper, which takes out the link turn independently. The link turn relies on ending the war on Yemen completely, which we one day won't do. The UAE counterplan, it solves the entirety of the Saudi Arabia advantage and most of their internal links. All of their solvency evidence is about military aid to Saudi Arabia. They had an excellent explanation for terrorism advantage, and the two are white. The coalition is bad for terrorism, but they don't collapse the coalition. They cut off military aid to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The only evidence in the affirmative that is about what happens when we cut off military aid to the coalition is in the context of Saudi Arabia. They may have evidence that you can find that says the UAE is doing bad stuff, but they have no evidence about military aid to the UAE, and we're the only ones with evidence about military aid to the UAE, which means the counterplan solves every internal link to their advantage and does not link to fill-in or terrorism, which will be the two in our net benefits to the counterplan. They have not contested this. Their only answer was that they answered fill-in and terror, but they answered them in the context of Saudi Arabia, which will win, the Yemen advantage. They've conceded that the war doesn't stop. This is the first piece of Rogan evidence. It's not a fill-in argument. It says that Saudi Arabia won't stop, can't stop, because they don't care that they're going to stop military aid. If they don't have the ability to bomb with Tornadoes and F-15s, which is their airplanes internal link, then they'll bomb with literally anything else. They have enough troops to go in there. They have allies in the region. They have places like Bahrain where the U.S. 5th Fleet is stationed in order to actually, in order to invest in Yemen. Their investment in Yemen is too high because Iran is funding the Houthi rebels, and they have a sort of strategic and a motivational investment in Yemen. They started the coalition bombing, and MBS has committed to it publicly, which means they will stay in Saudi Arabia. They do not solve the war on Yemen, which means there's only a risk of air disadvantage. We're also going for fill-in. They did not read fill-in answers in the context of the UAE. I will line by line every single one. First of all, the first thing you should understand is that our SOB evidence says that Pakistan proves that Russia will fill in places that the United States leaves. It is an example of cutting military aid to Pakistan, and Russia looking for opportunities. I'm about to read more evidence about the UAE specifically, why Russia and the UAE will specifically be a relationship, but I'll first line by line their answers and explain why none of them apply to fill into the UAE. They say the cost is way too long. This applies to transitioning the Saudi Royal Air Force to from F-15s and Tornadoes, which are the planes that we give them. The UAE mostly has ground troops in Yemen, which means that our military aid to them, if Russia fills in, they'd easily be able to aid ground troops, and it doesn't take long to train a ground trooper to use a different type of gun or the same type of gun applied by a different country, which means their first answer doesn't apply. They have to learn new stuff. It's not about planes because we solved the Saudi Arabia part. The next two arguments are also about RSAF, or about the Royal Saudi Air Force, the RSAF and Tornadoes, which are answered by our internal link independently. The UAE is prime for Russia now. Mutual interest in tech integration, Karsik, and Calviro 17. Latest benefitation, growing cancer cover in the Russian UAE announced today, deal program of 5th generation jet fighter in the Emirates, UAE and Russia, shares the blood perception of terrorism, radicalization of youth, strategies about bringing the Muslim and non-Muslim world together. UAE ambassador to Russia often goes from Moscow to Paris between confronting U.S. security crisis, regional stability. UAE and Russia have built a robust relationship for Russia. The UAE represents the business for Africa, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The Gulf state never invested in Russia's gas, oil, and real estate infrastructure. This proves that Russia and the UAE are able to tech integrate. They've already had small deals in the past for things like jet fighters. They have a close oil dependency, and they view counterterrorism in the same way. If we win fill-in, then it turns the whole advantage because it dumps the solvency, and it proves that non-U.S. weapons are worse. Non-U.S. weapons are worse because they have less ambitions of where they go. Russia wouldn't give a shit if they were just slaughtering civilians because Russia doesn't care. They're doing similar things, and they view counterterrorism the same way the UAE does, which means if the AF wins any of its internal links about the UAE being uniquely bad, but military aid wouldn't, cutting military aid wouldn't solve that, but it would bolster the impact to our turn, which is a straight turn to the AF's advantage because it would prove that the Russia would let UAE do whatever the hell it wants with its counterterrorism. The terror deal. The terror advantage will probably be the 2AR because I spent most of my prep time control effing UAE in the context of their affirmative. When I did that, the only places where it was found were the terror advantage and they just said UAE was bad. But I'm going for the terror DA as a turn to this advantage. The impact is the same on both sides, but US counterterrorism in Yemen combined with the UAE is good. There are 4 linked arguments. First is American intel. Our Karam 18 evidence says that the US is providing intelligence officers to the United Arab Emirates to make their strikes more detailed. Strikes are inevitable in either world, but they're more detailed and more precise in the world of US counterterrorism opposition, so we have more intelligence to provide them. That does count as military aid. The second argument is that Yemen has a very specific location and it's strategic because there's a lot of trade and international markets they go through. That's also our Quran 18 evidence. The third is joint operations. The United States trusts UAE enough in order to have joint operations. Fourth is empirical success. People like there are evidence highlights that UAE counterterrorism is specifically good because it's resulted in taking over ports that Al Qaeda held for months in a matter of days. These are lines from our EV. The only EV about UAE counterterrorism isn't the one in C. We're kicking out of the Saudi links because we're not going for them, and so this turns terror advantage. Their terror advantage. Okay. They do not solve the terror advantage. The 2AR will be a Hail Mary on this advantage because it's the only advantage that has a semblance of answering the UAE pick, but they would not solve it because they have no evidence that says cutting military aid off ends UAE counterterrorism efforts, so there's only a risk that those are a good thing and that the military aid to them does a good thing, which is the link analysis done by the negative. They have impact help, but obviously they've not answered the link turn to the advantage. They say the UAE is helping ACAP. This evidence in different lines of it says that UAE has relations with Salfari rebels who have had close ties with ACAP, but our evidence says this is actually a good thing because the UAE is in contact with local tribes. The reason the UAE does not want these people bombed is because they provide valuable intel and strategic cooperation in the region. Most of their evidence is rhetoric from bloggers who just enjoy saying that the UAE is doing bad things. The last argument I'm going to go for is prolif. Judge kick is good. The counterplan was conditional, so if you think I'm not winning anything, then you should judge kick the counterplan because the status quo is always a logical option. Let's go to prolif. This is a real easy way to vote negative because their only answers was that regional actors would not be against them. This argument lacked a warrant in the 1AR, and the negative is the only team that has evidence. You should look at the Edelman evidence. It says that Pakistan and North Korea are willing to transition for Saudi nuclear aid programs, and they have the ability to do themselves independently. Saudi capabilities inevitable. Motivation is key. Lewis 15. Saudi Arabia can build bomb anytime. Top track launches have been involved to spread around the globe. Saudi building dedicated city nuclear content. Saudi Arabia hardly be the nearest nuclear unity. Rich country to build bomb. Just material competitors good enough. 1970s while you build not proliferators have tried the most harmonic centrifuges. Cut the card at centrifuges. This turns the advantage because if there's nuclear arms race in the Middle East, it would cause destabilization and prolif.
Okay. I'll take all 5 seconds. The Yemen advantage, the prolif argument, actually, really quickly on the UAE pick, the Yemen advantage, the prolif argument, the terror advantage, or the terror disad and the terror advantage.
Okay. So UAE, fill in, prolif, terror.
Yes. UAE fill in prolif terror.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone good? Starting here. Over to the round is going to come down to who solves terror best. I'll do the weighing on the 1AC, and in the 1AC, but they've their extension of the UAE pick also relies on the net benefit being the terror advantage because insofar as they've conceded weighing and have an impacted fill in the Yemen advantage. They do not do sufficient impacting of fill in the 2 and all of this was new and not in the 1 and C, which means you should evaluate, strike it off their flow. Also, all of these arguments are very tangential and not specifically warranted. They just said Russia won't care, but the United States also doesn't care, which I'll get to the extent, which I'll explain on the extension of the evidence in the terror advantage. All of their arguments about Russia not caring about what the stuff they do in the war, but isn't in context of how they fuel terrorists, etc., which I'll explain in the extension there. All right, the terror advantage. They misunderstand the terror advantage. The argument is not things like blowback or that they counter is ineffective. It's the fact that they actively aid them there. It's not about the AP evidence or the Harvey 18 evidence. It's not about them just being in contact. They actively give them money, supplies, and recruit them and train them in their militaries in the first place. U.S. military aid allows them to do that. There is a line in my evidence that literally says U.S. military supports the UAE who actively helps and extends UAE terror groups. That is the argument. Their response, or actually, yeah. Their response misunderstands. They don't contact them for intelligence. This isn't warranted or explained in any way. They contact them and then give them money. Their arguments about how their arguments about that aren't answered. The prolif argument. Whoops, they didn't do any weighing and conceded the weighing for the terror argument, which is the terror is the only argument in the round that has a specific carded impact that says extinction will happen. Prolif would probably be bad and a lot of people would die, but they haven't answered the fact that extinction automatically outweighs because it's completely unreversible if everybody dies there. Prolif argument doesn't have an extended war for why it causes extinction, just why it would cause war and proliferation. That's not as bad as massive extinction due to bioterror attacks from terrorist groups means the terror advantage outweighs and comes first. Now their terror decide. They go for 4 internal links. They say 1 intel officers because they make strikes go. They've conceded the argument in the 1AC terror event, which is that the United States doesn't carry out strikes because of agreements they made with the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and they decide not to drone strike Al-Qaeda groups when they're leaving towns. That also answers their empirical argument about how they had a successful war takeover. The only reason that happens is because Saudi Arabia and the UAE talked to them like, hey, if you get out, then you won't be attacked and you can keep alive. We'll give you guns and weapons. Which is I believe all their arguments about how Yemen is key aren't impacted out. The fact that the Yemen war is ongoing is conceded because neither side solves that. Since they've read their evidence, it says U.S. pressure won't solve it. It'll just get worse with Russia, which means in both worlds nothing is contained, nothing actually happens. Their joint ops argument isn't explained, isn't actually impacted out. The town round comes down to terror because that's the only weighed argument that explains empirically that it says it directly lead to extinction. Here's the affirmative story. Right now, military aid to Saudi Arabia and the UAE grants them more resources, which they're able to grant to people like Al-Qaeda, and also being in connection with them and having reliance on those nations means the United States is incentivized to not drone strike Al-Qaeda groups because they're in agreement with them, which is what Saudi Arabia and the UAE tell them to do. Military support directly does that. You could call for the 1AC evidence and look at lines and say military support going to the UAE especially is causing that. They're not just getting intel from them, they're giving them money and weapons and allowing them to get away. That answers all of their internal links, it's empirically qualified and explains why all of this happens, and US strikes aren't carried out and nothing effectively happens because it's all just them letting Al-Qaeda get away to live another day so they can continue attacks. Terror comes first because it's the argument explicitly linked to extinction. The affirmative solves it because we take away the aid that Saudi Arabia and UAE give to them, which proliferates the terror groups and causes mass violence, extinction, and bioterror. Vote F. Good round.
Can y'all compile all whatever evidence you feel?
I'll compile. You want evidence relevant to what?
Whatever you think I'll need.
Okay, I got it. I can do it for you.
Oh, okay.
David, am I missing anything? I've split it into three. Your guns are.
So you have the UAE and the fighting.
Yeah. And then this is the negative, and then villain, and these are villain cards. Yeah.
Okay, yep, cool.
I sent them.